Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual neurolinguistic programming and cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in anger management issues, both court and private, marriage and relationship coaching, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one sessions in both French or English, and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DNB Therapy and Coaching Services at 301-325-1550, and our website can be found at lifecoachdanamzalak.com. Today, I'm very excited to have for our 10th and last episode of Season 26, a very special guest and expert in overcoming hardship in the pursuit of ultimate happiness, Mark Aylward. And just like every of my past episodes, I will leave it up to the guests to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Mark, the floor is yours.
Well, Dr. Dan, thank you again for having me. It's what a wonderful thing to call oneself an expert in happiness. That's I love that. Yeah, and thank you for the accolades. I suppose I am an expert in overcoming hardship on some level, although hardship, as you well know, is everywhere. You don't have to look for it. Career recruiter, and most of that time as an owner operator, so entrepreneur of technical staffing organizations. So my entire professional career has revolved around helping people with some pretty significant decisions in their life, what to be professionally. And often, Dan, as you probably find in your practice, when you go into one area in someone's life and you're a relationship person, you end up in many different areas of their life because many of them complement the other areas, both good and bad. And so, and the hardship stuff is just life events. I've gone through a very contentious divorce that forced me to sell my company when I didn't want to, for a price I didn't really want to. And then the subsequent existence after that, which was life-changing. And then a couple of other, life events, overcoming. My son struggled with addiction for a while, who has overcome that and is doing great. And then I've got some family members, one that's struggling with depression, and my mom actually took her own life late in life. So I would call all those hardships, I suppose, but overcoming them, to me, was just a choice. Each one of them presented two choices. You want to give up or you want to move forward. And fortunately, I never chose the give up option. So that's what father of three young adult children is probably something worth sharing as well. All, I believe, making the world a better place right now. So I'm very proud of that. So that's me.
Beautiful. And Mark, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your experience with every of the listeners. I mean, we're really glad we've reached over 1.6 million listeners for this podcast from all over the world. So your story is going to be shared and definitely inspire the many out there who are thinking about giving up at times. I mean, the thing is that after, as you mentioned, a contentious divorce, no one has the desire to get remarried until they fall in love and they forget completely how bad the divorce was, making the same mistakes, not really learning from what they've done, and then they go through the same similar hardship. So based on your own experience, Mark, have you made mistakes that you learned from but ended up making them again?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'd love to be able to say that I learned. The communicate. I think the biggest mistake that I made, probably centered around my marriage coming apart, was the belief that I actually could change another person.
Okay.
And I made that mistake a lot. And I was kind of gifted an explanation from a loved one that said, that just means you're a nice guy. And I'll take that, I suppose, but not in the middle of it all. This because of what I do for a living, perhaps, and how I was raised, Dan, I have the ability to help other people, and I have really good examples of helping people, like really, really with big things. And I guess I thought, and for a long time, that would translate, that would transfer that skill. And boy, in what you do, you must see all the time people making that mistake. I made it a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel that based on how you you took your own, I would say, expertise in your career and your skill set, etc., trying to help other people. And of course, what you've gone through, some have probably gone through something similar or not. But again, your own experience cannot be really transferred to others, which means that it's kind of hard to be able to mold someone and making them understand what you've gone through and to avoid making your mistake so they could learn from them. So
Mm-hmm.
transfer your skill set in others not making the similar mistake.
Yeah, I mean, it is, well, if I don't know if you've got kids, but that certainly happens with kids all the time. And I think we have a tendency as humans to presume that other people feel the way we feel or think the way that we think. I think that's human nature. I spend a lot of time, Dan, in self-reflection and trying to be in a state of self-awareness, predominantly in a state of gratitude. I find that's a really healthy place for me to be. But yeah, there are a lot of things that I've done for certain people that I've also been able to do for other people. I suppose that would be transference of that skill. But there are a lot of things that I do for other people that I wish I was better at doing for myself, which is kind of ironic.
Yes, it is actually. Sometimes we adopt more of a selfless approach to focusing too much on others' happiness than our own.
Mm-hmm.
In itself causes us to be able to find some form of or feel some kind of resentment. And then it's
Mm-hmm.
not the fault of the other people, but it's because we put ourselves in that situation
Mm-hmm.
consciously. And then we say, hey, hold on a second. I'm the one suffering here. I'm helping everyone else. What about me?
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
This kind of is something that happens very, very more often than not. So if we go back to your kid, I mean, especially the one who actually dealt with addiction, how did you overcome that hardship? I mean, did he go get therapy? I mean, were you able to help him or assist him to feel that you were a contributing part to his healing?
Well, it was a long time, and I think it was a direct result of the contention in the divorce, the picking of sides, and the emotional abuse that was kind of dished out to all of us. And then, one day we wake up and he's hooked, and but a long time passed, and some of the causal nature of it was smoking, vaping, and smoking weed, and he collapsed a lung, and we had to take him to the hospital, and we spent a week in the hospital. And when he came out of that experience, when he walked into the house, being discharged from the hospital, he walked right into his room and he threw everything related with smoking away. I didn't tell him to. I didn't ask him to. That frightened him enough, I think, because he hasn't gone back to it, and it's been well over a year now, and things are great. So I think it was fear.
Well, primarily, but then again, it's not. It cannot be transferred in every case because when you see people that drink, they get into car accident because being drunk, they go back in drinking again. So the
Yep.
car accident have not affected them as much as your son collapsed lung. So
Yep.
is it based on certain type of personalities that you would assume that because it affected him in a level where he was not able to breathe and that caused that fear to be able to change completely his habit?
I think it was a couple things. I think that there's a bit of hypochondria, so I think that he has a tendency to blow things up. That, not to diminish the severity of such a thing by any means, but he puts fear on top of fear when it comes to medical conditions. I think that was a factor. But
Yeah,
I think the biggest one, and you must see this all the time, people have to be ready to receive help, right? You
correct.
can't help somebody who's not ready to receive help. And he was, based on all the circumstances and the time. And there was a bit of, I'm getting up there. I'm in my mid to late 20s, and I think it's time I made a little more of myself than I've been doing up to this point. So I think it was a convergence of a few different things, but he was ready. He was ready to be healed.
Okay, excellent. Now, you mentioned a little bit about the divorce. I'm going to get into something a little bit more personal, if that's okay with you or not.
Sure.
But like we have also like another podcast called The Love and Dating Guru, where we bring people who have gone through very, very severe, divorce and difficult divorces. Now, do you find that this has changed you in the positive or negative way when it comes to relationships?
Um, when it comes to relationships, I guess if we cast a wide net there and we include my kids and my friends and my family and I've been dating a woman for just now 6 years and am most assuredly in love with her. So I think I've overcome that. But I didn't date for a long time. And I used to tell myself, because I was raising my children as a single parent when they were younger, and I would tell myself it's because I didn't want to introduce another stranger into their lives. And while that was probably true, it afforded me a pretty simple excuse not to date. And I took it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Would you say that your previous marriage, you were married to a narcissistic person? Is that the reason?
No, yeah, no question.
Oh,
Yeah, no question.
okay.
Yeah,
But at the
yeah.
end, you still had a full custody of the kids after the divorce, or what happened with this kind of negotiation?
Yeah, well, it was I filed in 2002 and I signed final papers in 2011. Took a long time. And she was just interested in hurting me and it didn't matter how. And I don't say that with any animosity anymore, any anger. It's just a fact. And that costs a lot of money, all my money. And at the end, I was tired of being represented by an attorney, which put me in a situation where I couldn't speak in court, and I wasn't happy with what the results I was getting, even though his reputation was stellar. So I fired him, and I represented myself. And as my own attorney, I got custody of my kids. They were in their teenage years at the time, but it was still custody and I'm not an attorney. So I did a lot of work and a lot of research and a lot of study, and I got help from a good friend of mine who is an attorney. But yeah, it was a long, long time, and yeah, no, I don't think it's jaded me. I feel very happy. I feel very grateful, and it took a while. It took a while, but it was a conscious choice. It was the cloud of darkness hanging over you is just not something I would wish on anybody. So I wanted mine to go away, and so I figured out how to get rid of it.
Absolutely. And the thing is, the important part is that I want every listeners in the podcast in this episode to be able to learn something from the guest. And ideally is if let's say you would compress all those years of hardship that you had and provide some strategies to the listeners and letting them know what kind of step they need to take, in the first step process to be able to go and find happiness despite all those hurdles and challenges that they see. So is there like specific things that you did to detach
Hmm.
yourself from all this negativity and to start finding your path to happiness?
Yeah, I think that the thing that keeps jumping into my head as you're talking is that it's all a choice. I think that you have 100% control over your own happiness. It's all a choice. And I was kind of gifted with some advantages. I was always an athlete growing up, so fitness was very familiar to me and very important. I don't know what I would do without my fitness routine,
Mm-hmm.
which I've modified as I've gotten older, but it was always there. I've always been a good eater, so I'm not a junk food guy. Always drank a lot of water. Um, I had a Catholic faith that I practiced for 17 years because my dad made me. And at 55, I found the Catholic faith again, which was a choice. There's something bigger than me going on here, and I need to latch on to it because this is too much for me, just alone. And so that's been wonderful. I remember my dad telling me when I was whining at him when I was a teenager, why do I have to go to church? And he's like, because when you're an adult, I want you to have something to come back to if you need it.
That's
And you talk about foreshadowing.
yes. Absolutely.
So yeah, I think the recognition that all of this is a choice and that I have 100% control over these choices is the biggest step. It's the key.
Mhm.
then everything else becomes tactical, but you got to have that strategy in place. I don't see how anybody would do it without that.
Absolutely. Now, do you feel that, I mean, some people misconstrued happiness as a feeling. You said it's a choice. Others say it's a mindset. So do you think that it's all of it together?
Yeah, this word happiness, I've had a lot of conversations around the word happiness. I remember my mom who struggled with her own happiness saying that nobody's happy. And
Mhm.
I said,
Mhm.
well, I'm not going down that road, but I get it. I mean, it's why that word? Well, I kind of circle back around when happiness comes up and say, well, what about the word fulfilled? What about fulfillment? That kind of speaks to purpose and passion and substance, and happiness, I think, is in there somewhere, but fulfillment is a word that appeals to me more than happiness.
I see. Now, as we know, happiness is very subjective. What makes you happy will make not someone else happy. So, do you think that this kind of like mindset or this fulfillment that you just mentioned, and you also mentioned something in the beginning as gratitude. If someone learns gratitude, learns appreciation for what they have versus what they want, that
Mm-hmm.
basically give them the first beginning step to reaching happiness. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, we are a society of instant gratification. We want
Mm-hmm.
more. If we have a billion, we want a trillion. If we want a trillion, we want a gazillion, etc. And so we're never really satisfied with what we have. In
Mm-hmm.
the moment that this thing that we already have is taken away from us. And
Mm-hmm.
when we start saying, oh man, I had that before, I would love to have that again.
Mm-hmm.
How would you, I would say, simplify people learning how to be more grateful?
Again, I think the recognition, and I can't remember who said this to me, but I think it's a physical reality that if you are emotionally in a state of gratitude, that you physically are not mentally or emotionally capable of experiencing any negative emotion because gratitude takes up all that space. And if that's true, that's magical. And I believe it is true because when I'm feeling very grateful, I don't have room for any of that negative emotion. So I think there's a physical component to it. I think it's actually a practical type thing as well as kind of a mental thing. But I practice it. I think back to my fitness analogy, everything to me is analogous to fitness. You can't go to the gym and do 900 sit-ups on Tuesday and have a flat stomach. You need to do 9 sit-ups for 100 days, and so the consistency of that small incremental progress over time with a focus on the process that you're following or the system that you're following instead of the outcome that you might be hoping for. And what I've found is when I can focus on small incremental change over time, that's very doable. Anybody can do small things over time. It's not easy, but it's simple.
Mhm.
And then over time, you begin to feel that muscle, that gratitude muscle actually develop. And I've developed mine so significantly, I have to pinch myself every once in a while.
Absolutely, yes.
It's practice.
Yes, a lot of it. I mean, look, if you look at Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler, all the professional bodybuilders out there, and they all say, it's interesting because I went to the Mr. Olympia in Vegas a few years back, and I
Mhm.
spoke to Ronnie Coleman. I mean, a few years, like 15 years ago when he was actually Mr. Olympia, and Jay Cutler and all the other guys. And the surprising thing is that when they go to the gym, they do not work out 3, 4, 5 hours like everyone believes. For them, it's an hour and a half, and they get out and
Yep.
then come back later on. So, as you mentioned, it's not about doing 900 setup in one setting. It's actually splitting all this by doing this every single day. And
Hmm.
consistency is key.
Hmm.
So, people need to learn that if they want to be able to achieve any goals they want in life, they have to be able to compress in a small period of time, but doing it more often than not.
Yeah, I think the other things that appeal to me when I talk about routines or processes in pursuit of happiness or any positive emotion is I need to do things that I enjoy. So I enjoy walking. I enjoy listening to music. I enjoy stretching, and I have a yoga mat that I am pretty proficient on my own with, and I enjoy that. Things can't take a long time because they're more difficult to fit into a busy day when they do. So doing things in 15-minute increments or 20-minute increments or 30-minute increments, that appeals to me as well. And then I think the other thing, it's kind of like learning now. You can learn, just Google it if you want to learn anything. That's no different than fitness. It's like you don't need to buy fancy equipment. You can actually do whatever you want to do without any equipment at all. So if you can figure out simple things that you enjoy doing that don't take a lot of time, that don't cost a lot of money, now you're talking to me about something that becomes sustainable, which is, I think, where people fall down. They give up routines, they give up commitments to nutrition, and I think those four elements certainly have helped me. They're simple, but simple, short period of time, not a lot of money, enjoyable.
And I like what you said about the walking part because most doctors recommend between 7,000 to 10,000 steps a day. And I started with 5,000, then I went to 7,500, then 10, 15. So I'm now around 50,000 steps.
Wow.
In a day.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, not consider, but in a week, I try to have 175,000 steps.
Wow.
So that's my goal. So if, let's say, I lack one day, I'll be able to catch up the next day. So I'll take early morning walk, lunch walk, and evening walks. So I'm not doing it in all one setting. I try to split it.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's, yeah. It's interesting. I've got, at my age, I'm 63. At my age, my friends I'll often hear one of my friends say, I don't have time. I don't have time. And, it's so funny. It's like, well, get up a half hour earlier, done, or, how much time do you spend on YouTube? How about no YouTube, instead do exercise? I mean, you don't have time is BS. That's an excuse. It's not truth.
And they say, Arnold Schwarzenegger said that result and excuse cannot be in the same sentence.
That's right. That's right.
So
there's a thread throughout all of this, Dr. Dan, and that is this issue of personal responsibility and personal accountability. I think the other choice that one faces when hardship comes, and it will come for all of us, it's not a question of if, it's just a question of when, is this idea of being personally responsible. Because if you want to blame a circumstance or you want to blame another person, which is very easy to do, and you could be right, you won't make any progress at all. So, but as soon as you take personal responsibility for your own well-being and whatever that means to you, now you can start making some real progress. And that is such a clear choice for me, but I'm empathetic for people that can't seem to make the right choice because an awful lot of people don't. And I don't know why.
Is it because they don't understand the principle of forgiveness? And because even if it's someone else that did you harm and that caused you the hardship that you're experiencing at this moment, there's a valid reason why you could blame the other person that created this huge setback in your life. So how do you overcome that? By understanding forgiveness, then you could move on?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up. I remember feeling bad that I had not yet been able to forgive my ex-wife. And I was telling a good friend of mine in just a conversation one day, I made that statement and he just started laughing and he goes, dude, what she did to you, take your time forgiving her, okay? So, that was kind of funny. It bought me a little time, but I was just always in pursuit of that. I wanted to forgive. And then then I wrestled a little bit, Dan, with this distinction between forgiving and forgetting or ignoring. Yes. Because I think ignoring is powerful. I think forgetting is powerful, but you can't just forget and kind of stuff that pain away. You have to process it in some capacity. So you can't just forget because we don't do that. You hang on. So as soon as I started to figure out my happiness is going to depend in large part when I can get to forgive her, I accelerated that journey. Why not?
And how long have you been married, or with your ex, that is?
I was with her for, I think, 16 years, and I think we were married for 12. We had 3 children together.
And how long would you say that it took you to be able to forgive being angry at her?
Oh man, I'm glad I'm not betting money on this answer or being held to the accuracy of it, but 10?
Oh, decade. Wow. Okay.
You know, the thing about it was, Dan, and that was it wasn't like a switch went off and on, right? It was gradual over time. So I was probably almost there for a long time. I got almost there pretty quick. But when you have children,
It's hard because
now, well, you have any interaction she has with them that causes them any stress or harm brings me back into that circle of anger. And it's very difficult, particularly when someone is threatening your child, for lack of a better phrase. That emotion it's the highest level of emotion I've ever experienced is when one of my children is threatened. So that I think kept me in there for a long time that I would not have otherwise stayed in so long.
and also because she's a narcissistic person, obviously that causes narcissistic people to still have a hold or have control, even if
Hmm.
the relationship is completely cut or the marriage is over. They still find a way that they failed in their attempt to fully control the other person.
Hmm.
They continue
Hmm.
hunting you. Even though they're distant from you, they keep hunting you by using those kind of like negative strategies or negative cognition to be able to kind of like still manipulate your mind and put you in the a zone of stress, constant stress.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is true. It is true. But I always, when I listen to you say that, I always think to myself, well, yep, but I let her do it. I let her, you know, and then I stopped letting that happen. And she was very intelligent, which when you have those mental challenges, being intelligent is actually kind of a curse for the other person.
Oh,
She knew all the buttons and how to push them really, really well.
and I think narcissistic people have mastered that skill to be able to
Yeah.
do it. And this is what makes them who they are. And I think that there's a scientific reason or a medical reason as to why they are who they are. And sometimes, like someone who has cancer, you cannot accuse them for having cancer. You just
Hmm.
maybe it could be their habits, whatever it is, but still they have a hormone in the brain called vasopressin that is
Hmm.
not created as much as someone who is empathic. And
Hmm.
because of that, they're more prone to having narcissistic behaviors.
Hmm.
So that
Hmm.
in itself, you say, well, are they deliberately acting narcissistic, or there's something medically or mentally problem?
Hmm.
If there's a chemical imbalance in the brain, people will have mental health condition,
Yeah.
including depression,
Yeah.
etc. So that in itself may but there's no pills that you could take that will
Hmm.
remove that narcissistic behavior. Unfortunately, it's just a practice, and again, the spectrum of narcissism. But again, this can be also the cause. So
Yeah.
some further research to be on that subject or on that topic. But again, we know for a fact that the vasopressin has actually an effect on it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do believe that there is a very clinical component of types of depression. I think there's sadness, there's melancholy, there's depression, and then there's clinical depression. And I'm certainly not as credentialed as you are, but I think that one of those, if not more than one, is significantly serious and needs medical attention to have any chance at all, and the rest of them are gradations of that, at least in my experience. But it's a serious business and it needs attention, and I don't think we give it. Mental illness in general doesn't get the attention I believe it deserves at all.
I agree. I agree, Mark. So before we conclude the podcast, if you could let people know about where they could find you or how they can reach out to you in case of them wanting to get inspired by your story or your tip and advice.
Yeah, so I think the simplest way, back to my favorite thing, simplicity, is my name, Mark with a K, and the last name's Aylward. That's my domain name. So if you go to markaylward.com, you'll find my website. I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn as well. I do a lot of work on LinkedIn professionally. So my website, and that'll get you to my YouTube channel where I've got a lot of video content that I think is very helpful for anyone interested in professional development or career transition. So let's just keep it that simple. Just go to markaylward.com and you'll find everything you need and you'll get to everything you need.
Beautiful. Well, Mark, That is all the time that we have for today's podcast. Now, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. And thank you again for participating and inspiring our many listeners with your incredible knowledge in the science of positive psychology. Now, we hope that you all enjoyed today's episode. And I'm also very excited about the many upcoming guests that we have scheduled for season 27 of the Happiness Journey podcast, filled with inspirational stories just like the one that you're listening today. Now, here are some concluding words of wisdom. Life's hardship may test you, but they do not define you. Your strength does. Happiness isn't about a perfect journey. It's about finding light even in the darkest moment. Every struggle you faced has shaped you into something stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Even when the road is tough, keep moving forward. Better days are always ahead. Focus on the small joys, the moment of peace, and the people who lift you up. No setback is permanent, and no challenge is greater than your will to rise. Keep believing, keep pushing, and never give up. Your happiness is still within reach, no matter what life throws your way. The best chapter of your life are yet to come. My name is Dr. Dan Amzalag, and you may all keep pursuing your amazing journey in life.